Welcome back to Move Better, everybody. Today I have with me Kailey Lewis, who is a fitness trainer from Southern. You live in Southern California, is that correct?
Yes,
But you're not from there. So, Kaylee, let's.
I am from
I'm
there.
so glad you are. Oh, I thought you were from
Yeah,
here. Okay,
I
I'm gonna
went to
let you
school
give
in
your.
Arizona. I
Got it.
associate with both.
Okay, perfect. So introduce yourself. Tell us a little about you, and tell us about your fitness business.
Yeah, so my name is Kailey, as Laura said, and I'm a personal trainer, like athletic coach, basically. And I specialize in helping snowboarders and mountain athletes. And so right now, what I'm really honing in on is athletic training for snowboarders, mobility training, strength training, stability training, and like joint health, because obviously it's a really high impact sport, and everything about it ends up deteriorating your body if you're not taking care of it. And it also is a really huge component to how you progress and how you're able to learn different tricks, whether it's basic carving or you want to like hit a 540 off of a massive jump. Like you need all of these little elements, and a lot of people cultivate really bad habits as they're learning, me included, and either end up getting hurt or they end up stopping their progression because all of these bad habits in their body end up coming together, and then all of a sudden you're at a stopping point. There's nothing more that you can do without reassessing how you're actually moving. So that's really what I focus on as a whole.
I think that's a key component for any athlete, and I generally define the athlete as somebody who moves, but anybody
Yes.
that like we create these habits of not moving well, and I think it's really important to find ways to change those patterns of movement, those habits, so that we have less risk of injury and keep doing this stuff. So that's awesome that you're incorporating all that. How
Thank you.
how has how has fitness changed your snowboard experience? Like
Yeah.
how like
So yeah, so when I was younger, and I use the term younger loosely, I'm only 22, but I was really into fitness like my whole life, but I didn't have like any specific goals with it, and I didn't train specifically for anything. I would just go to the gym, get a workout in, leave type of thing. And I was spending like maybe 80 to 100 days a season on the mountain when I was living out in Arizona. So I was snowboarding a ton, but no matter what I was doing, I was constantly like plateauing. I couldn't get the tricks I was trying, or I would get them one day, couldn't get them another day. I've hurt myself countless times. And so at a certain point, I ended up breaking my collarbone. And that was like the first time I really injured myself. And so that was kind of like a wake up call for me because it cut off my season. I couldn't ride the rest of the year. I had to go into PT, and I like it wasn't the worst break in the world, but I mean, I've had multiple concussions, that kind of stuff. So everything started to catch up to me. And I eventually was terrified to go into the park again, and like I could go down a hill, but I was scared to like try any tricks or like really do anything. And I knew that like my body wasn't working properly. Like I had all of these muscle inhibitions, and I was just snowboarding weird. Like I didn't have professional coaching in it. And so the way that I was doing it, I was hinging at my hip instead of going into a squat, and just like small things like that in how I was like impacting like my jump landings. And so after a while I was like, I suck at snowboarding. Like honestly, like I could do what I needed to do, but I wasn't good. I wasn't where I wanted to be. And so I took a step back into like how I was moving and like how my body was actually working when I was on the board. And so that's when I was like, I need to actually gain strength in these areas. I was working out, but I mean, I wasn't working out for a purpose. And so I started working on like my joint stability, my joint range of motion, which I had very little of, and just certain things like that. And then eventually, I honestly went with a coach, and I had him break down certain tricks for me and how my body should actually be moving for those tricks. And I come to find out I was doing them extremely wrong. So, of course, I wasn't getting them. But yeah, I just really started to broaden my knowledge of working out, of mobility training, of strength training, and started implementing that exactly to snowboarding and the things that I wanted to learn. like upper and lower body separation and stuff like that so that I could get back onto my board and everything would just lock in that much easier.
That's and has it helped?
Significantly. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, like we said earlier, I'm originally from Southern California. I didn't start snowboarding until I went to school in Arizona. And so I started 5 years ago. And I've made a lot of progress for someone that had only started 5 years ago. But when I moved back to Southern California this last year, I've snowboarded, I think, like 9, 10 times this season, something like that, like drastically cut how much I used to snowboard. And yet this year is the most progress I've ever made because when I'm on the snow, I have a purpose and I know exactly what I want to be learning. And I've been training off snow so that I have less risk while I'm doing it off snow, right? Like if I'm trying a trick and I'm not like sliding down a mountain, I'm a lot less likely to get injured and I'm much more likely to make it make sense in my brain and create those habits in my brain of how I should be moving so that when my board becomes an extension of my body on the mountain, it just clicks.
That's awesome. Two things we have in common. One, I broke my collarbone when I was 3 times when I was younger, and all
Oh my
from
gosh.
trying to do gymnastics type moves like cartwheel on wet grass, and then a I don't even know what was a front like they called it a head spring in gym class, and I got stuck. And then a third time when I was doing a front walkover, and so I never learned how to tumble, and that always like because back then it wasn't I didn't go to physical therapy, you just let it heal, and and I think it restricted me and definitely caused a lot of fear. So I feel your pain on the collarbone injury. It's really tough, and I think it's important that we are now, having people go to therapy, and you learn how to move your body differently because of that. Because I think that will last a lifetime for you. And I wasn't I didn't start skiing until I was in just after college. He's my husband now, but my boyfriend at the time was into skiing, and so I was older as I started. Um, and my second year skiing, I didn't really know what I was doing, and I didn't realize I had a turn to stop, and was scared that I was going to go down a black diamond, and I face planted and tore my ACL.
Ooh.
And getting back, I mean, the with my ACL injury, like I had been in the gym maturing, I was active and I learned stuff, but like the ACL injuries 100% took me to a different level as far as my strength training. And like now I know that like doing strength and mobility work is the most important thing because that allowed me to get back on the skis, to be able to be a better skier, to eventually ski race, which I wasn't very good, but I was, it was something I was able to do and keep me going. And if it wasn't, and I haven't skied in a long time, and that's just life circumstances, but I still feel like I could get out and do it because I still, 30 years later, am keeping up with my strength and mobility work. So I think that's a great lesson to learn where you are now and to carry forward with your clients too. Like that's, it's a good gift that you're going to give them.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, are there, what top exercises or what are some key exercises that people might do to help um, or that you think are important in flexibility, mobility, strength training, any of the above?
Yeah, so something I really focus on is functional training, which I like that term in some respect, and in other respects, I think oh my goodness, it gets taken out of context because it's such a broad term and so many people apply it to so many different things. Same thing with mobility, because mobility to me is like your joint range of motion and controlled joint range of motion and strength in that range of motion. Whereas like flexibility is technically uncontrolled joint range of motion and it's just gross joint range of motion, which is okay in some respect. But to me, I don't think that's great for snowboarding and skiers because when we're moving into movements and out of movements, we need that strength and we need it in our joints. And that's why something like an ACL tear happens. And of course, like you can't prevent all injuries, but and of course with skiing, if your skis get thrown in a circle, your knee's not going to go in a circle. And unfortunately, like that's just how that happens. But I do think that you can prevent these things if you're actually training your joint range of motion and training that strength and stability specifically. And so for me, what I really focus on is not some weird exercise that no one's ever seen before that somehow relates to snowboarding, but I do train in multiple planes of motion, which I think is one of the biggest things that people miss. If you go look up like snowboard specific workouts, it's always going to be like do a plank and then do some squats and maybe some lunges. And those are great exercises, but you're only training one plane of motion and you're only training that range of motion, which isn't necessarily what you're doing the entire time. When we're snowboarding, we're twisting our upper body and our lower body is staying planted, or we're pressing into our ankles in both directions. And people don't realize that. And you're also needing that stability, specifically in your knees and your hips, because when you're impacting, and if you don't fully impact into those like jumps, or even just if you hit a weird patch of snow, then you compensate with other muscles, that's going to cause injury as well. So things that I really focus on are the transverse plane and aplanar motion. So you're going through a full range of motion, usually adding some sort of twisting or rotation, whether that be in your trunk or in your hips or in your leg. And then also really focusing in on CARs, so controlled articular rotations in those joints, and really bringing them to their max point so that your body already knows, okay, this is my max. So when you go into a movement, your body already understands the max, and you're not going to be in that max when you're snowboarding. So it's that much easier.
And I've heard the term CARs before, and you said controlled articular rotation.
Mhm.
It, for can you dive a little bit more into that as to what those like what that might look like as far as an exercise?
Yeah, so basically what it is taking a joint. You can do it with literally any joint in your body. So I mean, I wouldn't really do it in my wrist necessarily, but just for point of representation, is your wrist can go down and then it can twist and it can come up and it can go this way and down. And so a car is taking not just going like this, but taking it, how far can it actually go? And you're stabilizing every other part. And it should be difficult because you should be hitting your maximum point of rotation and you should be really honing in on that tension. And so I really focus that specifically in my hips and my knees, because if your knees and your hips are able to move in their full range of motion, and then also strengthening that, all of these things have to be compiled with a strength and stability aspect as well, which is why I think mobility training is great, but you can't just do mobility training, right? So everything has to be put together. And so I really just focus in on taking every single range of motion that you can possibly get and something that you might end up going into, whether it's on purpose or on accident, because that's how you're going to not eliminate injury, but reduce it. So
I think everyone listen up. That's excellent words of advice. We can't just train one thing. We can't just train flexibility. We can't just train mobility. We need to incorporate the mobility, the stability, the relaxation, the nutrition, the hydration. The rest and recovery time. It all has to come together. And people always want to get one. What can I? And I even asked it. What's the top exercise? And there's not just one. Like it depends on what you need and what you're missing to spend more time on that. And sometimes that's going to vary day to day depending on where you are.
and it'll vary person to person as well, right? But I think everyone on a physiological level and on a biomechanical level is the same. And so, yeah, you may have different muscle issues or instabilities that you should train specifically. But when it comes down to it, the way that our muscles work and the way that our neuromuscular system works is all the same. So if you're having issues with one part of your body, it really just takes someone with that knowledge of those muscles and those joints to pinpoint exactly where that issue is occurring and then fix it.
How I've seen some of your Instagram posts, which are phenomenal, by the way. Everybody
Thank you.
go follow Kailey on Instagram. you showed just recently showed some exercises, some great warm ups. Like, do you find that? Um, I mean, most of us know we need to do some warm up in the gym. And what I hear people saying is, oh, I went for a run and then I stretched a little bit and then I just get into my lift, or maybe I, ramped up my bench press and started with the bar and then went up to, my PR. Uh, do you find that snowboarders are good at doing a warm up before getting on the mountain? Number one, and two, how are you? How are you? What kind of warm ups would you prescribe? It's going to be different on a mountain and then in the gym, but
Yeah.
how are you including your warm ups in that?
Yeah. So to answer your first question, no, snowboarders, skiers all together suck at warming up. And in fact, normally a warm up, if you ask them, would be some sort of beer and chairlift. And that is one of the most detrimental things that people can do, in my opinion, because if you, especially in altitude and especially in cold temperatures, your body is already not going to want to move as much. And then if you just throw yourself into something, that is exactly how you may not injure yourself, but you're going to be creating compensations in your movement patterns that are going to be really hard to break after. And especially if you're just learning or you're just learning a new trick or something like that, if you're trying to just throw yourself into that, like you're going to have issues undoubtedly. And so in terms of warming up, a lot of people think a warm up is just stretching, like static stretching. And I disagree with that completely. I really don't think you should be doing static stretching at all before a workout. I don't statically stretch ever, which I know is a controversial topic, but I definitely have reasonings for that. But I personally think at a baseline, you should be doing some sort of active or mobility, dynamic stretching, whatever you want to call it. All the terms are thrown around everywhere now. But to me, that just means that you're working full range of motion and you're working through a full range of motion. You're not holding something. Because if you're holding something, what you're doing, like if you're in a toe touch and you're holding that toe touch, so basically a hamstring stretch to an extent, you're taking that muscle and you're trying to lengthen it out, right? And if you have muscle issues, you feel tightness in your hamstring, that's an issue with your neuromuscular system that's causing your hamstring to contract, 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 and nothing's telling it to relax. So if you just sit there and try and pull it apart, well, those muscle spindles are already not working properly. And now you're just pulling apart these muscle spindles that are already not working properly. And now they're still not working properly. And it's just lengthened. And now your muscle is just this loose elastic and nothing's telling it to contract properly or to not contract properly. And so that's when you're going to lose that stability aspect and that strength aspect. And that's how you get in and out of movements, especially snowboarding or skiing, because in our hamstrings, our quads, and our knees are like obviously the main parts. So if you're on the mountain and you're like, I'm just going to do a few stretches because I'm tight or I'm cold, you're hurting yourself by doing that. So I would really support going into deep lunges. If you know the knees over toe guy, doing deep lunges like that with your knees over toes, because that's a crucial aspect of skiing and snowboarding. And then going in and out of that full range of motion. Don't just sit there and hold it. Go in and out for all of those. Same with crossover walking lunges, where your legs are kind of staggered one behind the other. And that's creating your hips to then go into a transverse plane, which is basically a rotation if people don't know. So you want that rotation in your hips and you want your body to understand how it can get in and out of deep movements in your legs and rotational patterns. So those are my two main ones for skiers and snowboarders that are easy to do in the parking lot. There's a lot of other ones that I would prescribe, maybe if you were in a gym, but obviously that's a little bit harder to do, like in this mountain setting.
Yeah, I know. I sometimes because I would frequently see people in line skiing, and they're just throwing the ski up and stretching the hamstrings. Which, first of all, I could never get one ski up. I don't know how they do that. I'm not very talented on that for the balance end of it on ski. But um, like take it just before you clip in. Like you can, or I like to do it before I put my boots on because then I'm getting some foot mobility. Like yes, we
Yes.
want our feet stable in the boots, but like they also have to those very subtle movement in them to allow you to move. So it's much easier in your getting dressed and stand up, do a few of these dynamic lunges, rotational patterns. you can get some upper body rotation with lower body rotation to kind of warm that up.
Yes.
And then get your boots on before you put your board on, and before you put your skis on.
Yeah.
Just do a little bit out in the snow so you're kind of keeping that going. And then,
Yeah, and I mean the main point of a workout is just, or not a workout, of a warm up is just to get your blood flowing, get your body used to the movements that you're going to put it in. And so if you're just statically stretching, your blood's not moving. So you need to get some activity going, just minimal activity, but get your body ready to move. And that's really the whole goal of it.
exactly. Um, this is gonna be more of a personal question. How in the
Yeah.
world, like the two places that I wouldn't think? I mean, I know California has Big Bear and uh, right in Mammoth is more north, right?
Yeah.
And my husband's been out to Big Bear. I've never skied, and I think of Southern California. I don't think of skiing at all. Um,
No.
I do think of like surfing, and then Arizona, absolutely. So how did you get into how did that spark your interest to want to do that? Growing up in Southern California, going to school in which I consider a desert, but
Yeah. Yeah. So I grew up in San Diego County, for people that don't know, Oceanside specifically. So I live 4 miles from the beach. And that was great growing up. I'm not going to complain at all. So I surfed a little bit. I'm not great at surfing. I probably never will be. And I skated a little bit. Again, not good at that either, but I've always been like active. I swam growing up. I rode horses competitively growing up. So I mean, I did things like that. But when it started to come to like thinking of where to go to college, like I was so sick and tired of just like blue skies every day. And like I know that sounds so like off for most people, but I just like at a certain point when the weather's the same every day, like you get really tired of it. At least I did. And I again was never great at surfing, never great at skating. So it was fun, but it wasn't anything that really like struck my interest all that much. But my dad grew up in Colorado, and I love the snow and I love seasons, and so I just fixated honestly on wanting to snowboard. I had never done before. There was nothing that really triggered it, but I was looking at schools and I genuinely picked my school off of being able to snowboard. And so I know Arizona sounds like you can't snowboard there because people think desert. But if you've ever been to Flagstaff, Arizona, it is sitting at 7,000 feet of altitude. It is this
oh, wow.
small little town in this massive forest. Everywhere you look is just forest upon forest. And there's this mountain up there called Humphreys Peak with a ski resort called Arizona Snow Bowl. And it is this tiny little resort, but the town is 20 minutes away from it. So if we wanted to snowboard before class, we could go. If we wanted to snowboard after class, we could go. If we chose to skip class to go snowboard, we did that a lot. And so the whole town basically was centered around skiing and snowboarding and mountain biking and hiking. And it's just like the most outdoorsy little town ever. And it was my favorite thing ever.
that's that. I get chills. So there's life advice from Kailey right there. Really wise words from at your growing age of 22 and your blossoming age, like we because here in the Northeast we complain about it being, the weather's like in New England that the weather, if you blink, the weather will change. Um, but we complain when it's gray and cloudy, or it does, like, you want a change and you want that variety and you want to explore different options, and that's key for movement as well as for your life and just your general experience. And then carrying over, I think of surfing and skating very similar to snowboarding as far as the
Mhm.
balance end of it goes, and
Yeah.
the mechanics, but and so and then finding something like just being persistent and staying with an activity that to find something that you love. If you don't love one movement, try it, do something that scares you. But if you don't love it and you're not finding joy in it, then you find something else and follow that passion and joy, because that will carry over into everything we do in life. So
Yeah, definitely. And especially when carrying that into exercising and workouts, because I know majority of people don't like to work out and they don't like to exercise. And that's kind of why I wanted to create this program, because the exercises that I'm prescribing are typically more fun. They're not just the stereotypical because there's so many resources out there. If you look up like how to train for snowboarding on the off season, a snowboard workout, they're boring. They're the same thing over and over again. Every single resource says the same thing. And they transfer in one way or another, but not in all ways. And so I really wanted to take the basic exercise that everyone hates and make it a little bit more fun and add in like balance work and stability work and like taking your snowboard in the grass and strapping in and practicing movements on your snowboard if you can't get to the mountain and like stuff like that that someone's actually going to want to do if they want to help themselves.
That segues perfectly into my next question. Tell us about your program.
Yes. So right now I have a free week of workouts that I just sent out yesterday. So it won't be free forever, but when you're seeing this, if you want to DM me, I can get that to you. And that's basically just a little taste of what I do for functional training for snowboarders. And it's kind of what I've been talking about. It's implementing strength training, plyometrics, cardio, balance work, all those kinds of things into multiple day programs that really only take 30 minutes to an hour. Like I don't want to take your whole day. And so that's like what my baseline is for training programs. But on my Instagram, I also have little things of how to strap into your snowboard so that you can practice different tricks like that in the grass, or different mobility challenges that you can try, different balance things that you can try if like you don't want to jump right into the training program. So that's basically like what I have going right now. And the goal is by May or June, I should have like a full 12-week training program for the off season, because the off season is honestly your best bet in training for snowboarding. If you ride all the time, you might not necessarily need to implement a bunch of strength training every week to snowboard. But majority of people don't get to ride all the time. In that case, doing that kind of stuff will significantly help you. But the off season, a lot of people are mountain biking, they're hiking, they're doing a lot of summer sports, and all of that complements well as not necessarily directly to snowboarding, but just movement in general, which is obviously your whole brand. So you just want to stay moving, whatever that may be. Mountain biking is so difficult and so challenging, and I love it, but I'm awful at it. But I do want to help people get their endurance specifically for mountain biking, strength, and stuff like that. So the program will be focusing in on working with summer sports as well as preparing you for winter sports, because all of them really do go hand in hand.
So cool. You got some awesome things coming out, and I can't wait to see what you do. How can people reach out to you if they want to reach you?
Yeah, so right now my main source of contact is my Instagram page, which is snow.functional. So if you DM me there, I'll always answer you. So no worries on that. Comment on my post, I'll answer you, that kind of stuff. I also have an email if you really want to email me, which is Kailey, Kailey, Lewis, LEWIS.fit@gmail.com. I'll get back to you there as well. But I would say for the most part, Instagram, and if you want to message me on TikTok, I'm on TikTok as well with the same snow.functional. So.
And I know I mentioned it before, but you have some awesome content on Instagram. Like there's, if you're not ready to connect and go into a full program, she's got some incredible tips that, to go check them out. And there's a lot of stuff there, and get to know Kailey on the snow and off.
Thank you
so much for being here today, Kailey. I enjoyed talking with you, and I look forward to learning more about your journey and kind of maybe having you back on as things go again, as you grow and as your program comes out. Like, you've got a great message to share, and keep going with it because it's awesome.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, that's it for today's episode of Move Better, and I hope you have a great day. Don't forget, when in doubt, breathe it out and take life one step at a time, and we will talk to you next time. Take care.